Hello everyone. I share real stories that I know and I'm sure you will like them. Enjoy watching and don't forget to like.
My son's friend said something I can't forget. It wasn't rude, and it wasn't inappropriate, at least not on the surface. But the way he said it, the way he looked at me when he did, it reached somewhere in me that I thought had gone numb. And ever since, I've been trying to forget that moment. But my body remembers it, my breath does, my heart does. Because with one simple sentence, he made me feel something I hadn't felt in years. Alive. My name is Dana. I'm 51. I've been married to Tom for 26 years. We live in a colonial-style house tucked into a cul-de-sac just outside Albany, New York. 3 bedrooms. Faded shutters. A porch swing that squeaks when the wind is high. It's the kind of house you dream about when you're young. When you're building a life. But houses age. Just like people. And sometimes, even when the roof holds and the floor doesn't creak too loud, something in the walls still feels hollow. Tom and I have 2 boys, our Ryan, who's 24 and lives in Boston now, and Caleb, our youngest, who's 19 and still taking classes at the local community college. He comes home on weekends, usually with laundry, sometimes with friends. That's what our house has become, really. A place people return to, a place that holds memories, but not much momentum. My days are quiet. I work part-time at the library downtown. Cataloging, mostly. The occasional book club. The women there are lovely, polite, predictable content. Sometimes I catch myself wondering if I'm like them now. Tom works in insurance. Has since before we were married. He's good at it. Steady. He loves routine. Golf on Sundays. Roast chicken on Thursdays. News at 6. Lights off by 10. And somewhere along the way, I learned to stop craving surprises. We don't fight. We don't flirt. We coexist. He's not cruel. He's not careless. He's just tired. Or maybe I am. The truth is, I've spent the last few years feeling like background noise in my own life. Folding towels, refilling soap dispensers, checking expiration dates on mustard jars. But nothing about me has felt new or bright or seen. Until that afternoon. It started with a couch. Caleb had been asking for weeks to move the old sectional out of the basement. Apparently, it was too gross for movie nights. So, on a warm Saturday in April, he brought 3 of his friends over to help him haul it up the stairs. One of them was Jordan. He was taller than the others. Broad-shouldered, sun-touched skin, a calm confidence in the way he carried himself. The others laughed and joked, calling each other names, tossing cushions like kids. Jordan was different. He was polite, present, observant. When I walked down to offer them drinks, he was the only one who stood to greet me. "Hi, Mrs. Taylor," he said, his voice low but clear. I smiled. "Just Dana, please." He smiled too. And it wasn't rushed. It lingered. Like he was actually looking at me. Not through me. Not past me. Something fluttered in my chest. Something uninvited. They moved the couch, stayed for pizza, and laughed over a basketball game in the background. I stayed mostly upstairs, trying not to hover. But every so often, I found myself glancing toward the basement, listening for his voice. At one point, I was in the kitchen, wiping down the counters, when I heard footsteps on the stairs. It was Jordan. He'd come up to grab napkins. He paused in the doorway, looked around the kitchen, then at me. "You've got a great house," he said. "Warm. Lived in. Kinda like you." The sponge froze in my hand. He must have seen the surprise in my face, because he gave a soft chuckle and added, "I mean that in the best way." And then he was gone. Back down the stairs like nothing had happened. But something had. That night, I didn't tell Tom what Jordan said. Not because I was keeping a secret, but because I couldn't explain the way those words had landed. They shouldn't have mattered. But they did, because it had been so long since anyone had looked at me with curiosity, with warmth. So long since someone had noticed anything about me that wasn't practical or expected. The next time the boys came over, I made brownies. From scratch. I told myself it was just to be nice. But I also wore a soft blue blouse I hadn't touched in over a year. I put on mascara. Just one coat. Jordan noticed. Not with words, but in the way he said, "Hi, Dana," like we were already familiar. Like there was a private thread tying one moment to the next. Later that day, I found an excuse to bring snacks to the basement. They were watching something loud. Everyone sprawled out on the floor. Jordan was the only one who stood to take the tray from my hands. His fingers brushed mine. "Thanks," he said, then added, "I missed your baking." It was innocent, but not really. That night, I found myself standing at the mirror longer than usual, looking at my reflection, trying to figure out what he saw, and whether I had the courage to see it too. 2 weeks later, Caleb texted to say he and the guys were coming over for a study session. Tom was working late. I brewed a fresh pot of coffee, set out fruit and cookies. Again, telling myself it was just habit, just being a good host. But my heart raced when the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Jordan standing there alone. He held a coffee carrier in one hand. "I brought you one," he said. "Hazelnut, right?" I blinked. I must have mentioned that flavor once, offhandedly. But he remembered. We sat in the kitchen while we waited for the others. Small talk. Music playing low on my phone. Then, out of nowhere, he looked at me and said, "You don't seem like someone who's done feeling alive." It was a whisper, a declaration, a gift. I stared at him. I could hear my pulse in my ears. And for a moment, I forgot how old I was. How married. How wrong this all was. Because all I could think about was how right it felt. I didn't answer. I couldn't. But I didn't need to. Because that silence between us said everything. And then, just like that, the front door opened. Caleb called out something about being late. Jordan stood slowly. His chair scraped the tile. He looked at me one last time. A question in his eyes. And maybe an answer in mine. Then he was gone. But what he said still lingers. And I'm not sure I'll ever forget it. For days after, I kept replaying that sentence in my head. "You don't seem like someone who's done feeling alive." It echoed in the quiet spaces while I washed dishes, folded towels, browsed the same grocery aisles I always did. I caught myself smiling at nothing. And I hated myself for it. It wasn't like I was planning anything. But something had shifted. Something I hadn't meant to feed was suddenly awake. That weekend, Tom and I went to dinner. The usual place. The same booth. The same questions. "How was your day? Did you see the email about insurance rates? Should we get the gutters cleaned this month?" I answered like always. But the silence between our words grew louder. More obvious. And I realized something. He hadn't noticed anything different about me. Not my tone. Not my silence. Not even the fact that I hadn't touched my wine. But Jordan had noticed a coffee flavor I mentioned once. And I hated that comparison. But I couldn't stop making it. The next time Jordan came over, I tried to avoid him. I busied myself in the garden. Pretended I had a call. Took Max on a walk I didn't want to take. But I still felt it, the weight of his presence. The way the air changed when he entered a room. That night, after the boys had left, I was wiping down the kitchen counters when I noticed something. A mug. Still full. Still warm. Hazelnut. He had left it for me. On purpose. I didn't drink it. But I didn't throw it away either. It sat there for hours. Like an invitation I couldn't answer, but couldn't ignore. The guilt came in waves. I told myself it was nothing. That a young man being kind doesn't mean anything. But something inside me started to want more. Not from him. From myself. I started reading again. Books I hadn't picked up in years. I started walking every morning, wearing real clothes, not just sweats and old t-shirts. I wore perfume to the library. And people noticed. Even Tom noticed, sort of. "You look different," he said one night. I waited. Hoped. "New shampoo?" he asked. I nodded. and smiled like it didn't hurt. The moment it all cracked open wasn't loud. It was quiet, like most of the dangerous things in life. Tom was upstairs watching something on TV. I was downstairs sorting laundry. My phone buzzed. A text from a number I didn't know. "It's Jordan. Hope it's okay. I got your number from Caleb's group chat. Just wanted to say thanks again for everything." I stared at the screen. It was harmless, but my heart raced anyway. I didn't respond. Not that night. But the next day, I found myself checking my phone at red lights. And eventually, I replied, "Of course. Glad you're comfortable here." That opened a door. And neither of us closed it. The messages were innocent at first. Coffee recommendations, book suggestions, the occasional funny meme. But eventually they changed. "You looked beautiful today. Do you even know how rare your kind of kindness is? Sometimes I think you smile like you're trying to hide something." And one night, after one glass of wine too many, I replied, "Maybe I am." That was the moment we crossed the line. Even if nothing physical had happened, the betrayal was real. Because I found myself guarding my phone, deleting messages, smiling at the sound of a notification. And every time Tom asked what I was smiling about, I'd lie. "Oh, just a funny thing from the library group chat." Ryan sent a meme. Each lie came easier than the last. Until it didn't. It happened on a Sunday. Caleb had gone to the city with friends. Tom was out running errands. I was upstairs folding towels when I heard the doorbell. "Jordan." He held a bag. "Left my charger here. Thought I'd grab it before Caleb gets back." I nodded. "Let him in." Pointed toward the guest room. But we both lingered in the hallway. Something simmered in the silence. Something unspoken but understood. "I should go," he said. But he didn't move. "You should," I whispered. But I didn't either. For a second, the silence between us was louder than words. But I stepped back. "I'm sorry," I said. "This can't happen." His face didn't fall. He just nodded, slowly. "I know, but for what it's worth." I wasn't playing a game. Then he left. And I stood in the hallway for a long time after, shaking, afraid of what almost happened. And of what already had. A week later, Tom found the messages. He didn't yell, didn't accuse. He just showed me the screen and said, "I want to ask why." But I think I already know. I cried, apologized, told him nothing physical happened. He believed me, but that didn't undo the damage. Things changed after that. We tried counseling. We tried cooking dinner together again. We even tried going away for a weekend. But the space between us had become a canyon. And some things, once broken, don't return to what they were. Tom didn't leave, but I think in his heart he did. And me? I let the distance do the work. I stopped answering, but I still think about what he said that first day. "You don't seem like someone who's done feeling alive." Because he was right. I wasn't. I just didn't realize the cost. Tom left his wedding band on the dresser the morning of our 27th anniversary. Didn't say anything, didn't look at me, just walked out. And I stood at the window, watching his car pull away, holding my coffee, hazelnut. Because even now, I still can't forget what Jordan said. And I'm not sure I ever will.